Tonight, I'll tell you a story that begins with silence and one single light flickering in the middle of the forest. Deep in northern Montana, a young couple, Emma and Jack, have just arrived at an abandoned wooden cabin. They left behind the noise of the city, chasing a dream of peace, nature, and a simple life. But on their very first night, something else found them first. The snow was falling thick, blanketing the forest in silver. The cabin creaked with every gust of wind. From the dark pines beyond the clearing, a long, haunting howl rose into the frozen air. Emma froze her hands, still gripping the lantern. Jack turned off the generator, listening. The second howl came closer, deep, mournful, and unmistakably wild. Wolves. Their new home stood right in the middle of wolf country. "Maybe it's just passing by," Jack whispered. But then through the frosted window, a pair of amber eyes flashed in the dark. The shape of a gray wolf stood just beyond the porch, its breath misting in the cold air. It didn't attack. It didn't growl. It just stared long enough to make their hearts race, then turned and vanished into the woods. For hours afterward, Emma couldn't sleep. "Why would it come so close?" she whispered. Jack shrugged, but unease hung heavy between them. The next morning, they found paw prints circling the cabin, pressed deep into the snow. But something about them was strange. Smaller prints trailed beside the large ones, as if a pup had been walking beside its mother. That's when Emma noticed the floorboards near the hearth, one of them slightly lifted, as if something beneath had been scratching. She leaned closer, listening. A faint sound, almost like a whimper. She and Jack exchanged a glance that said everything. The wolf hadn't come for them. It had come for what was hidden underneath their home. What they found next changed everything they thought they knew about fear, love, and the wild. And when the truth revealed itself, it left even the forest silent. What was that wolf trying to tell them? When Emma first saw the cabin online, it looked like a miracle. A small wooden home tucked between pine trees, overlooking a frozen lake in northern Montana. Off-grid potential, the listing said. Needs repair. Jack had smiled at her excitement. "You sure you're ready to trade coffee shops for snowstorms?" "That's the point," she answered. "To feel something real again." For years they had both been chasing other people's dreams. Deadlines, rent, noise. They wanted peace, connection, and a new start. The cabin, though battered by time, promised all of that. The journey north took 10 hours. The road narrowed into a single lane through the woods, snow crunching under their tires. By the time they reached the clearing, the sky had turned violet. The mountains towered above, silent and watchful. Inside the cabin smelled of cedar and dust. The windows were covered with frost, the fireplace cracked with age. Yet to Emma, it felt alive, a heart waiting to beat again. They spent the first day cleaning. Jack fixed a leaking pipe, while Emma hung old lanterns, turning the cold interior into a small haven of light. From the porch, she could see the lake, frozen solid, its surface glittering under the pale sun. Beyond it stretched miles of pine forest wolf territory. The locals in the nearest town 20 miles away had warned them. "You'll hear them some nights," the gas station owner said. "They don't bother people, but don't bother them either." Jack had laughed it off, but the man's tone carried respect, not fear, the kind that comes from living long enough beside something greater than you. That first evening, Emma recorded a note on her phone for their travel blog. "We're here," she said softly. "It's colder than expected, but it's beautiful. If you're watching this, remember to look up sometimes. There's a whole world that doesn't need Wi-Fi to feel alive." Jack chuckled behind her, adjusting the old generator. "Tomorrow," he said, "we fix the roof. Then maybe the world will finally stop leaking on us." But the world had other plans. As the last light faded, a mist rolled across the forest floor. The pines turned into black silhouettes, whispering in the wind. Far off, a sound rose, long, trembling, ancient. The howl. It drifted through the trees, low and mournful, and something in Emma stirred. She had never heard a wolf before, yet the sound felt familiar, like a story whispered from a time before humans built walls. Jack turned to her. "It's just one, right?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure. The sound had echoed from more than one direction, a single voice answered by another faint and distant. Inside the cabin, they lit the old fireplace. Sparks crackled, casting shadows across the room. Emma stared at the flame and imagined the wolves out there somewhere under the same moonlight, walking across the snow. "Do you think they know we're here?" she asked. "If they do," Jack replied, "let's hope they like rent-free neighbors." Outside, unseen eyes watched the glow through the trees. The following morning, the world seemed peaceful again. Frost crystals glittered like diamonds. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead. Jack took measurements for a new deck, while Emma explored the edge of the forest with her camera. She found tracks, large paw prints in the snow. She crouched, tracing them with her glove. They were fresh. The outline was clean, the claws sharp. But beside them were smaller prints barely half the size. "A pup," she whispered. That realization sent a ripple through her. The wolf from last night wasn't hunting, it was protecting. Back at the cabin, she mentioned it to Jack, but he shrugged. Probably just passing through. They roam miles a day. Still, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something had brought the wolf close, not curiosity, but purpose. That evening, as the temperature dropped, she noticed the lantern near the porch flicker again and again, like a heartbeat. The forest, once silent, seemed to listen. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a wolf lifted its head and answered one short, low howl, followed by a softer sound almost like a call to a lost one. And beneath their cabin floor, something faint moved. But Emma and Jack didn't know it yet. For now, they were just two dreamers, chasing a peaceful life in the wild, unaware that the wild was about to answer them in the most unexpected way. The storm came suddenly that night, a blizzard rolling in from the mountains. Wind hammered the cabin walls, snow hissed through the cracks, and the forest disappeared behind a white curtain. Jack was fixing a loose board near the fireplace when he froze. "Did you hear that?" Emma paused, listening. For a moment there was only the wind, then a soft sound, muffled, weak, like something alive. "It's coming from under the floor," Jack said. They knelt beside the old boards. One plank, warped by age, had lifted slightly. The sound came again, a faint whimper trembling in rhythm with the storm. Jack fetched a flashlight. "Probably a raccoon," he muttered, prying up the board carefully. But the beam revealed something else. A small shape huddled against the cold earth fur, matted with ice ribs, thin and shivering. It was a wolf pup. Emma gasped. The tiny creature barely moved, its breath shallow. Mud clung to its paws, and a scrap of frozen moss stuck to its fur. It was no more than a few weeks old. "Oh my God, Jack! It's alive!" He stared in disbelief. "Under our house." The pup whimpered again, eyes barely open. Emma reached out instinctively, but Jack grabbed her wrist. "Wait, Emma, it's a wolf. We can't just... It's dying." Her voice broke through the wind. "We can't leave it." She pulled off her scarf and wrapped the trembling body. The pup's warmth was fading fast. Jack hesitated, torn between law and humanity. He looked around the cabin, their dream home now echoing with the cries of a wild creature. "Fine," he said softly. "Just for the night." They placed the pup inside a cardboard box near the fireplace, wrapped in towels. Its breathing slowed, then steadied slightly. Emma warmed milk on the stove, the closest thing they had to formula. She dipped a cloth into the cup and let a drop fall to its lips. The pup licked weakly, then turned its head. It's dehydrated, Jack said, remembering a rescue video he'd once seen online. We need to keep it warm first. Outside, the storm raged harder. The cabin lights flickered, and the sound of howling rose again, long drawn out, carried through the snow. The same tone as before, the same direction. Emma looked at Jack, realization dawning. It's the mother. She's looking for it. They ran to the window. Through the storm, a silhouette stood near the tree line, massive gray, still as a statue. The wolf's eyes glowed faintly in the beam of their lantern. It didn't move closer. It just stood there facing the cabin, then turned its head toward the woods and howled again, a low, resonant call that made the air vibrate. The pup stirred inside the box, responding with a faint, broken yelp. Emma's chest tightened. She knows. She knows it's here. The moment stretched human and wolf divided by a wall of wood and fear. Then the mother vanished into the storm. Hours passed. The pup slept fitfully, breathing shallow. Emma refused to rest, sitting beside it, watching every rise and fall of its chest. We should call the ranger station in the morning, Jack said. They'll know what to do. If it makes it to morning, Emma whispered. Near midnight, the power went out. Only the firelight remained, throwing orange shadows across the room. The pup whimpered again, twitching as if dreaming. Emma placed a hand gently on its back. You're safe now, she murmured. She'll find you. Jack watched her, realizing something had shifted, not just in the cabin, but between them and the forest itself. The boundary between us and them was thinner than he'd ever thought. When dawn broke, the storm had passed. The forest was silent again, too silent. Jack stepped outside and saw fresh tracks leading from the trees to the cabin and back again. A large wolf had come close during the night, so close that her prints circled the porch, then faded into the pines. She came back, he said quietly, but didn't try to break in. Emma looked down at the box where the pup now breathed evenly, chest rising and falling with quiet strength. She trusts us, Emma whispered. Or maybe she's testing us. Whatever it was, something sacred had passed between the cabin and the wild that night, a fragile thread of understanding. They didn't know it yet, but that thread would soon be tested in ways they could never imagine. Morning came pale and brittle. The storm had passed, but the forest was buried beneath a white ocean of snow. The air itself seemed to crackle with cold. Inside the cabin, the tiny wolf pup still breathed a faint rhythm beneath the blanket. Every few minutes, it twitched paws, moving as if running in a dream. Emma placed her hand gently on its side. Still fighting, she whispered. Jack poured hot water into glass jars and slid them around the box for warmth. The old cabin smelled of wood smoke and milk, the strange scent of survival. They spent the next hours trying to do what instinct told them was right, even though every action felt like trespassing into nature's code. Emma fed the pup one drop at a time with a soaked cloth. The creature barely licked, but after each sip, its eyes fluttered open a little longer. Jack kept the fire steady, calculating how much wood they could spare. If the generator fails again, we're stuck, he muttered. Then we make it work, she replied, says never leaving the pup. By noon, the wind had died. Jack radioed the ranger station static. No connection. The storm had downed the lines again. So, it's just us, Emma said. He nodded. Us and a wolf. The pup stirred at the sound of his voice, letting out a thin, high squeak. Emma smiled. See, he knows you're talking about him. Or warning me, Jack said, half laughing. For the first time, the tension in the room softened. Days blurred together. They kept a chart on the wall marking the pup's progress. Breaths per minute, ounces of milk taken, hours slept. Each mark felt like a promise kept. Emma named him Ash for the faint gray streak across his back, like smoke. Outside, nature was merciless. Coyotes called in the distance. Ice cracked across the lake at night like gunfire. Yet inside that fragile cabin, something warm was blooming, a quiet, wordless bond. On the third day, Ash managed to stand. His legs wobbled, tail drooping, but he made it 2 steps before collapsing into Emma's hands. She laughed, tears in her eyes. "Look at you," she whispered. "You're stubborn, just like your mom." Jack crouched beside her. "You mean like you?" That night, while Ash slept, they heard the howls again, this time closer, sharper, echoing off the hills. "She's still searching," Emma said. Jack stared into the dark window pane, his reflection merging with the trees. "And we're keeping what she's looking for." Silence stretched between them, guilt mixed with awe. "We'll give him back," Emma promised, "when he's strong enough." Jack nodded slowly. "If she's still out there." The next morning, paw prints appeared again around the cabin, larger this time, circling, deliberate. The mother wolf was watching always from just beyond sight. Emma began leaving scraps near the tree line, not to feed, but to signal. Just scent, just trust. Jack disapproved. "If Fish and Wildlife finds out, we could be fined." "We're not feeding," she said calmly. "We're communicating." He wanted to argue, but the quiet conviction in her tone stopped him. On the 5th day, Ash took his first real howl. It started as a squeak and rose into a trembling note that startled them both. He looked confused by the sound he'd made. Emma laughed softly. "He's calling her." That night, they left the porch light on a beacon against the endless dark. A pattern began. Each night they'd light the lamp, each morning they'd find new tracks nearby. Once Jack saw movement in the fog, a shadow gliding between trees, watching. It was never threatening, just waiting. But survival in the wild has its own rules. On the 7th night, the pup suddenly refused milk. It shivered violently, whining as if something inside it hurt. Emma panicked. "He's cold. He's too cold." Jack wrapped the pup in his flannel shirt, holding it near the fire. "Come on, little guy," he murmured. Minutes passed. The fire popped. The heartbeat slowed. Emma's eyes filled. Then a tiny breath and another. The pup stirred, sneezing weakly. Relief broke through like sunlight after clouds. She laughed through tears. "You scared us half to death." Jack smiled. "Guess wolves don't quit easily." Outside, a single howl answered, deep, strong, close. They froze. It wasn't random this time. It came directly from the forest behind the cabin. Emma stepped to the door lantern, trembling in her hand. The beam caught the snowflakes, turning them into falling stars. Beyond the tree line, 2 golden eyes glowed, calm, unblinking. "She's there," Emma whispered. The wolf didn't move closer, but the silence between them pulsed like a heartbeat shared across distance. Jack lowered his voice. "Maybe she's been watching every night." Emma nodded slowly. "Then she knows he's alive." That realization brought peace and a deeper weight. They were no longer rescuers. They were temporary guardians in a story older than themselves. As dawn broke, Jack found his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. He looked at the pup curled beside the dying fire and said quietly, "He belongs out there. We're just the bridge." Emma looked through the window, where the forest glowed gold beneath the first light. "Then, let's make sure the bridge holds." On the 8th night, the wind changed. It started as a whisper through the trees and became a scream rolling down the mountains. A new blizzard was coming, fiercer than the last, the kind that swallows sound, light, and reason. Jack had seen the warning on his phone before the signal vanished. Whiteout conditions expected. Stay indoors. They barricaded the cabin as best they could. Emma stacked firewood. Jack checked the roof beams. Outside, the forest disappeared behind a wall of snow. Ash, the pup, whimpered at the sudden pressure change. He paced in small circles, nose twitching toward the door. "He feels her," Emma said. "The mother." She nodded. Animals sense storms and each other. By midnight, the generator failed. The only light came from their lantern and the steady pulse of the fireplace. The temperature dropped fast. The wind clawed at the walls, shaking the old nails loose. "If the roof gives, we'll lose the heat," Jack said, voice tight. A loud crack split the air. Part of the outer beam snapped. Snow sprayed through a new gap near the window. Emma gasped. "We need to reinforce it." Jack grabbed a plank, hammering, while the wind howled like an endless chorus of ghosts. Through the noise, another sound rose deeper, resonant, deliberate. A howl. Emma froze mid-step. It wasn't distant anymore. It was close, right outside. The pup answered with the tiny cry pressing against the door. Jack turned off the lantern. The room fell into near darkness. Only the flicker of the fire remained. "She's here," he whispered. Emma opened the curtain just a sliver. Outside, the world was a blur of white. Yet in the chaos, a shape moved large, gray, steady. The wolf mother. She stood against the wind snow, coating her fur like armor. Their eyes met through the glass, wild and human, both filled with the same urgency. Then the unthinkable happened. A deafening crash. A tree split by ice collapsed across the roof, smashing the corner beam. Snow and wood poured inside. The fire sputtered, scattering embers. Ash yelped in terror. "Get him!" Jack shouted. He lunged for the pup, while Emma shielded the flames with her body. Smoke filled the room. The air burned with cold and heat at once. The fire's dying. Emma coughed. Jack looked up at the hole in the ceiling. Above it, through the blizzard, a single light flickered, their porch lamp, somehow still burning, swinging violently in the storm. "If it goes out, she'll lose us in the snow," Emma shouted. "Or find us." They worked fast. Jack secured a tarp. Emma fed what remained of the wood into the hearth. Outside, the mother wolf's howl cut through the wind again, closer, desperate, but not threatening. The pup whimpered, answering weakly. Emma turned to Jack. "We have to let her see him. Are you crazy? She could trust me." Before he could stop her, she opened the cabin door. The storm hit like a wall of knives. She stepped onto the porch, clutching the pup inside her coat. "Emma." Jack yelled, but the wind swallowed his voice. The light above her swayed wildly, casting broken halos through the snow. Out beyond, the wolf stood motionless, a gray phantom against the white. Emma knelt, shielding Ash from the wind. She lifted the lantern high. "He's alive," she cried, though the storm might never carry her words. The wolf didn't move. Then slowly, she lowered her head and howled, not a warning, not rage, but a call low and trembling like a heartbeat echoed through centuries. The pup squirmed, crying out in reply. Jack appeared at the doorway, eyes wide. "Emma, come back inside. She needs to know." The mother stepped forward, 1, 2 cautious strides. Her breath steamed in the air. Snow clung to her whiskers. Their eyes met again, human fear against wild trust. For one suspended moment, everything stilled, the wind, the snow, the world. Then the wolf turned, vanishing into the storm. Emma closed the door, heart pounding. She saw him. "That's enough." Jack pulled her into an embrace, both shaking. "You're insane," he whispered, "but you might have just saved us all." The night dragged on. They kept the fire alive with scraps of furniture, anything that would burn. Outside, howls echoed again and again, a conversation between mother and child through walls of snow. Near dawn, the blizzard began to fade. Light seeped through the cracks, pale gold over white ruin. The cabin still stood battered, but whole. Jack stepped onto the porch. The forest glittered silent once more, but in the snow, clear as writing, were prints, fresh wolf tracks, leading straight to the porch steps, circling once, then turning back toward the woods. Emma joined him, holding the pup close. She came again, probably during the storm. She smiled faintly. She followed the light. Jack looked up. The lantern still burned weak, but steady. Guess it worked. They stood in silence as the first sunray touched the forest. The wilderness seemed to exhale as if acknowledging the small human light that had held through the storm. Inside, Ash raised his head and released a short, uncertain howl. This time it was answered instantly, soft, distant, unmistakable. The mother was still out there. And now she knew the way back. 2 days after the storm, the forest was still quiet, too quiet. No wind, no birds, only the soft groan of melting ice sliding from the cabin roof. Jack fixed what he could of the damage, while Emma stayed close to Ash, now strong enough to walk without stumbling. The little wolf explored corners, sniffing boots, gnawing gently on scraps of firewood. "He's getting better," Emma said, smiling. "Yeah," Jack replied, hammering a nail. "And that's the problem." The crunch of tires on snow broke the stillness. A white pickup truck pulled into the clearing, marked with the green seal of Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. "Oh no," Emma whispered. 2 officers stepped out, one older wearing a thick parka, the other young, clipboard in hand. The older man tipped his hat. "Morning, folks. We got a report of wolf activity around this area. Mind if we ask a few questions?" Jack swallowed. Of course. The ranger's gaze scanned the porch, the broken beam, the tracks frozen in the snow. "Looks like you had visitors." "Just a storm," Jack said quickly. The ranger knelt near the prints. "Not just the storm. That's a female gray wolf, all right, and she's been here more than once." His partner scribbled notes. "We've had issues lately, ranchers losing calves. They're nervous." Emma tightened her arms around Ash, who whimpered softly inside her coat. The ranger's eyes flicked toward her. "Ma'am, what are you holding?" Silence. Then a faint yelp gave her away. The younger officer stepped forward. "Is that a wolf pup?" Jack exhaled, defeated. He was under the floorboards. "We found him during the blizzard. We kept him warm just until we could call someone." The older ranger's face softened, but remained firm. "I understand your intentions, but by law you can't harbor a wild wolf, even a pup. They're protected under federal and state statutes. We'll have to take him." Emma's eyes filled. "Please. He wouldn't have survived without us. The mother's still out there. She comes every night." The man hesitated. Sure, we've heard her. We've seen the prints. She's looking for him." The younger officer shook his head. "If we take the pup, we can reunite them under controlled conditions." Jack clenched his jaw. "Controlled." "At a wildlife facility," the ranger explained. "We monitor releases, make sure it's safe for both wolves and people." Emma looked down at the pup's trusting eyes. "He doesn't know facilities. He knows her." A heavy silence hung in the cold air. The older ranger sighed. "I'll tell you what. You keep him one more night. Tomorrow morning we'll return with proper transport and a vet. No more." Emma nodded reluctantly. One more night. As the truck left, Jack muttered, "If they take him, he'll never see her again." Emma stared at the trees. "Then maybe we don't wait for tomorrow." That evening, the couple sat by the fire in near silence. Ash slept between them, his tiny chest rising and falling. Jack turned the radio dial, catching fragments of local chatter. Wolf sightings increase. Livestock concerns. Proposals to thin populations. He switched it off. All they see is threat. And all I see is family, Emma said quietly. The porch light flickered again as dusk settled. Outside, the snow glowed faintly blue. From the forest came a low melodic call, the mother's voice steady as breath. Ash woke instantly, ears twitching. He answered with a small howl, then another stronger. Emma smiled sadly. She's calling him home. Jack rubbed his temples. If we do this, we break the law. If we don't, she whispered, we break something inside ourselves. The decision didn't come easily. They packed what little they could, lanterns, blankets, rope. Emma wrapped Ash securely in her coat. We'll take him to the clearing near the ridge, she said. That's where her tracks always start. Jack looked at her, fear and admiration tangled in his eyes. You really think she'll come? I think she never stopped. They stepped out under the moonlight, breath fogging in the air. Each step crunched softly through the snow. Behind them, the cabin glowed faintly, its single porch lamp the only light for miles. Halfway through the woods, the howls began again, closer, clearer, weaving through the trees like threads of silver. She's near, Emma whispered. Jack set the lantern on a fallen log, its glow trembling like a heartbeat. He placed his hand on her shoulder. If she shows up, don't move fast. No fear, no fear, she repeated. The forest waited. Then a shape appeared between the trees, massive, graceful eyes catching the lantern's glow. The mother. She stood still, snow glistening on her fur. Every instinct screamed danger, yet what they felt was reverence. Ash squirmed, whimpering softly. Emma knelt and opened her coat just enough for the mother to see. A low rumble filled the clearing. Not anger, but tension. The wolf stepped forward, slow, deliberate, tail low. Jack's pulse thundered in his ears. Easy, he whispered. The pup wriggled free, stumbling toward the snow. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then the mother moved, closing the distance with effortless grace. She sniffed the air, touched her nose to the pup's fur, and emitted a deep, trembling exhale. Recognition. Emma felt tears freeze on her cheeks. Jack's throat tightened. Without another sound, the wolf nudged her pup gently, turning toward the forest. Ash followed his small prints, fading into hers. And then, just like that, they were gone. Dawn came pale and cold, washing the forest in gold and silver. The air carried a stillness that felt sacred, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Emma and Jack stood outside the cabin, staring at the fresh tracks that led away into the woods. The snow around them glittered like glass, each print a story pressed into the earth. She took him, Jack murmured. Emma nodded, voice trembling. She took him home. For a long time they didn't move. Only the faint smoke from the chimney rose between them and the forest twisting into the morning light. Then Emma noticed something. The prints didn't simply vanish. They circled the cabin once before heading north. She came back, Emma whispered. She walked around us, like she was saying goodbye. Jack exhaled slowly, the sound clouding the air, or saying thank you. Inside the cabin looked emptier than before. The box where Ash had slept was just an imprint in the blankets, the faint scent of pine and fir lingering in the air. Emma traced her fingers along the floorboards where they'd first found him. It feels so quiet now. Jack set down the tools he'd been holding. Maybe that's what peace sounds like. They sat by the fire, the same one that had saved a life only days earlier. Its crackle seemed softer now, like a heartbeat fading into memory. "Do you think she'll make it?" Emma asked. "She's a mother," Jack said. "They always find a way." A silence stretched between them, not empty, but full of everything they couldn't say. Later that day, the rangers returned. The older man stepped out of the truck, scanning the clearing. "Looks like she came back," he said quietly, spotting the tracks. "She did," Jack replied, and she took her pup. The ranger smiled faintly. Then, maybe this story wrote its own ending. He didn't issue a fine. He didn't ask for details. He only nodded once as if acknowledging something beyond rules, the unspoken pact between those who protect life and those who live it. When they left, Emma stood on the porch watching the snow drift down. Her heart ached, but beneath it was pride, a quiet certainty that what they'd done was right. She looked at the lantern hanging above the door, the one that had never gone out even in the storm. "We'll leave it on," she said. "Every night." Jack smiled. "Just in case she ever passes by again." As night fell, they lit the lamp once more. Its glow spilled gently onto the snow, marking the spot where two worlds had met. Somewhere far off, a single howl rose steady, confident, no longer desperate. The sound drifted through the trees, carrying both farewell and gratitude. Emma closed her eyes. "That's her," she whispered. "Or him," Jack said, smiling softly. "Maybe he's learned how to sing back." The light flickered in rhythm with the wind as if answering. Weeks passed. The forest thawed into spring. Birds returned. The lake shimmered blue again. Tourists sometimes stopped by the cabin, asking about the wolf story. The locals whispered about the one where a light in the woods had guided a mother home. Emma would smile and say only, "It's not just a story, it's a reminder." On the first warm evening of May, she and Jack sat on the porch. A breeze carried the scent of pine and earth. From far across the valley, faint howls echoed, not haunting, but harmonious. Jack tilted his head. "You hear that?" Emma nodded. "I think they remember." He wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "Then, let's keep the light burning for them, for us, for everything wild that still believes in home." The camera pulls back a single golden light glowing against the vast dark of the forest. The wild is silent again, but no longer lonely. Spring in Montana arrives quietly. Snow melts not in floods, but in whispers, drops of water sliding from pine needles, the lake sighing free from its frozen skin. Weeks passed since the night of the light. The cabin no longer felt like a stranger's shelter. It had become part of the landscape, a scar that healed, then blended into the forest. Emma spent mornings planting wildflowers near the porch. Jack rebuilt the roof beam stronger this time, using timber from fallen trees. And every evening before sunset, they lit the same porch lantern. Habit, maybe. Or hope. The rangers never returned. No one asked questions. In town, stories drifted about the wolf that circled the cabin and vanished with the storm. Locals called it the Lantern Den legend. Some said the light kept wolves away. Others swore it drew them closer. Emma just smiled when she heard it. Legends start with truth, she would say. One afternoon, while clearing brush near the ridge, she found something half buried under thawed snow. A single gray tuft of fur caught on a branch. It shimmered silver in the sunlight. She held it carefully, smiling. "She was here," she whispered, "watching." Jack joined her, wiping sweat from his brow. "Think she'll come back?" "Not for us," Emma said, "but maybe to show him where he belongs." As spring deepened, the world returned to life. Deer grazed at the edge of the clearing. Geese swept over the lake in perfect formation. Even the air smelled different, alive, unbroken. Emma began writing about the experience not for fame or views, but for memory. Her blog post titled "The Light That Led Her Home" spread quietly online, reaching wildlife volunteers and sanctuary workers across the country. Messages poured in, people who had once feared wolves now seeing them differently. A park ranger from Wyoming wrote, "Maybe compassion is the missing tool in conservation." Jack laughed when he read it. Guess your little light reached further than Montana. They decided to turn the cabin into something new, not a homestay, but a learning retreat for people who wanted to reconnect with nature responsibly. They called it the Lantern Cabin Project. Visitors came in small groups, students, photographers, even retired farmers to hear the story. At night, when the forest fell silent, Emma would tell them, "The wild isn't cruel or kind. It just mirrors what we give it." And every time she said those words, the wind through the pines seemed to answer. Then, one cool evening in late May, something extraordinary happened. Jack was by the lake setting up a solar panel when he heard a familiar sound that froze his breath mid-laugh. A howl. Not one, several. Deep, resonant, layered with youth and strength. He turned toward the tree line. Through the shifting light, shapes moved gray, sleek, powerful. A pack. Emma ran out from the cabin, eyes wide. "Do you see them?" Jack nodded slowly. "Yeah. And I think I know one of them." At the front of the group stood a large female wolf, fur dusted with silver. Beside her trotted a younger one, leaner, quicker, his coat streaked with faint smoke-gray markings along the back. The same pattern that once earned a name, Ash. The wolves paused at the edge of the clearing. The mother raised her head and released a single steady howl. The younger wolf echoed her perfectly, his voice strong, sure. The air vibrated. Emma felt tears sting her eyes. "They came back," she whispered. "Not to stay," Jack said softly, "just to let us know." The wolves lingered a few moments longer. Then, as the sun slipped behind the ridge, they turned and disappeared into the trees, two shadows fading into the endless green. Emma stood there long after they were gone. "You think they remember us?" Jack smiled. "No doubt, but they don't need us anymore." That night, the couple sat by the fire, the porch light glowing faintly in the distance. The forest hummed with the soft rhythm of crickets and wind. Emma looked toward the lake. "Funny," she said. "When we came here, I thought this place would change, but it's us who did." Jack nodded. "Maybe that's what the wild does. It tames the noise inside you." She smiled. "Or teaches you to listen." The camera pulls back the same cabin, the same light now joined by a chorus of distant howls under the stars. The circle was complete. The light that once saved a life now guided countless hearts back toward understanding. And in the heart of the forest, under that same endless sky, the wolves sang not of fear or hunger, but of home. In the end, this story was never just about a cabin or a storm or even a wolf pup named Ash. It was about what happens when fear steps aside long enough for understanding to enter. For generations, people have drawn lines between wild and human predator and protector. But sometimes all it takes is a single act of compassion to blur those lines and remind us that the same pulse beats through every living thing. Emma and Jack came to Montana looking for peace. What they found instead was connection, fragile, untamed, but real. A moment when a human light guided a wild heart home. The forest never spoke yet. It answered them through howls that echoed their kindness, through the silence that followed when harmony was restored. And though the wolves moved on, the message they left behind stayed etched in every sunrise, every gust of wind through the pines. Coexistence is not a dream. It's a choice we make every day. We often think of the wild as something outside ourselves, something distant, dangerous, foreign. But the truth is simpler. The wild lives within us too, in the instincts that protect, in the courage to care, and in the love that asks for nothing in return. So when you hear a howl in the distance, don't think of fear. Think of a mother searching a light burning, and two people who chose compassion over comfort. That's how healing begins, not with control, but with respect. And maybe, just maybe, that's how the world finds its balance again. If this story moved you, remember real wolves still roam our forests, facing real dangers every day. Support your local wildlife sanctuaries, speak for ethical conservation, and help keep the wild truly wild. Because the light you share, even the smallest one, can guide something beautiful home. Subscribe to Echoes of the Wolf for more true stories of connection, courage, and compassion. Together, we can keep these lights burning, for them and for us.